All right, I want to open the Village of Rhinebeck Planning Board meeting for November 7, 2023 to order. On continued business, we have supposedly the final approval for the modified site plan for 810 Chestnut Street. I am a little confused and concerned. We had asked David Gordon to write up a resolution. He sent it out to us a week ago. Various board members sent comments to David, modified it, and everyone said this looks okay. And then today, the day of the meeting, we get a completely modified resolution by the applicant with all kinds of changes to almost every word and every sentence, with comments from David Gordon that he recommends this is okay. I object to this. I'd like to consult with the zoning enforcement officer on this. So since most of us just got it and haven't really had a chance to look at it, we can't even look at this resolution. It seems like all these are very fine details that seem to be re-arguing everything that I thought was settled over the past year. So I'm not sure how to proceed. We have a resolution before us that was sent to the applicant that the village board, the planning board made comments on. We were ready to approve at 7:01. Let you guys start building your house tomorrow. And we got this thing, which we're now going to have to look at and send it back to David Gordon and Ken McLaughlin, because we can't approve this, because we can't sit here for 3 hours arguing about every word and every sentence. So I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I feel that we should make a motion to approve the application as submitted by our attorney, or to reschedule this meeting for 2 weeks from now, when there's time for the attorneys and the zoning enforcement officer to work on it and come to an agreement. So that's my feeling. I'd like to hear from the other board members how they feel about this.
Mr. Chair, could I just be heard on behalf of the applicant, if you don't mind?
Yes.
Just give a little color. So,
Mr. Leffius, you want to come on up so we can see you?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Leffius.
So, appreciate all of you taking the time and appreciate the comments. I also appreciate the work that your council has done in putting this together. And he's been very helpful, I'm sure, to you as well as to me in communicating throughout this process. Certainly don't want to jeopardize the resolution or the approval of this resolution tonight. That was not the objective in sending these comments along. As I communicated to Mr. Gordon, all of these comments, and I mean all of them, are in the recital section, the whereas clauses in this resolution. I would say, as an attorney, and I think your attorney would confirm this, typically the meat of this is the conditions, which we've left alone. The purpose of the comments that you're seeing in the recitals is merely to ensure that it's a complete and factually accurate recitation of the history of this process. We're mindful that this applicant could be before your board again, that this resolution could appear at a future hearing should she need it to be. And we just want to make sure that as the history of what happened here, and this resolution is likely to be that only history that remains when this process is through, that it's just accurate, complete, and that it's all, and that things that may have been missing are in here. You'll see if you take a look at this, many of these are just to correct quotes, fix typos, insert additional events that took place throughout the timeline here. And I'll note that your counsel, which I truly appreciate, was able to, on a short timeline, turn this around and indicate his position on each of our comments. I'll also note, I understand that your counsel gave this to you perhaps a week ago. We didn't receive it until yesterday afternoon. So we received it, we turned it around right away with some comments, again, just to the beginning section. And I'll say almost all of them, your counsel indicated in the margin, no objection. So many of them were just corrections to the quotes. Certainly was not an effort here to complicate this or certainly to jeopardize the approval here. So we'd like them to be considered. We wanted them to be heard. They would be in sooner if we had received the resolution sooner. But I just wanted to give that color. But as your board sort of discusses this.
There are comments in here from David Gordon that says, recommend rejecting this, recommend verifying with Ken McLaughlin, verify with Ken McLaughlin.
Sorry, okay.
Recommend against this language, recommend that we approve, that the Ken McLaughlin approve this. So, you know, recommend rejecting the proposed edits. So there are things in here that, I don't want to argue this tonight, line by line, but we need a clean copy. And if this is what I would need David Gordon to meet with you, I need to look over this copy, I need to have the board then have time to look at them and see whether they agree that these word changes are acceptable to the board or not. An applicant dictating the approval of their site plan is kind of, unheard of.
Mr. Chair, we're not looking to dictate the approval. We totally understand what you've just indicated. We are not looking to dictate the approval. This is your board's resolution. Make no mistake about that. We understand that this is your resolution. It is not our resolution. These are comments, suggestions, proposals, and again, many or most of them, your council indicated no objection. Many of them, particularly if you look at the first page, are just corrections to quotations. So genuinely was not looking to overcomplicate this.
Well,
Apologize if that's what took place here. So again, this is your resolution and it's yours to do with what you wish.
so we can approve the resolution we've agreed upon, or we can go back to the table and have this looked at and David looked at, and then get another draft from David to the board, and the board makes comments back to David, and we come back in 2 weeks and try this again. Or we approve this tonight. I don't see what the we're going to approve this and let you build your house, so I don't know why you are trying to prevent that. I don't understand.
If I could, Mr. Chair, could I consult with my client for a couple of minutes? Maybe we'll step outside and we'll come back in. Would that be all right?
Okay.
And there might be actually a middle ground here in which we go through, but this is the only thing on the agenda tonight. It's not like we have to move on to other applicants. We could go through, and the ones that David does not object to, we could include, and the ones that he has questions about, we could delete and move to go forward with the resolution.
Yeah, well, I see your point, John, but that really wouldn't give us a chance to confer with our attorney directly, not in a public meeting here. I'm a little concerned because some of them seem so arcane that it makes me worry that I'm not understanding. Like on the whereas on July 26th, our thing said, CEO Ken McLaughlin issued a determination that, among other things, found the dismantling of the building was a deviation from approved construction plans, was changed to the dismantling of the principal structure, i.e. framing walls. And so I don't know the legal implication of that. And at the end it says, based on this, the CEO determined not to fine the applicant. And the applicant's asking for that to be changed to, based on this, the CEO determined that no fine was required or appropriate. So I'm not a lawyer, and it worries me that you felt strongly enough to say that what we had gone back and forth with our attorney and seemed to be okay might not be. And I don't know those seem like the same thing to me, but I would want to be able to talk with David about this. Or like as Chairman Miller says, we had gone through this, all of us had a chance to look at the thing, and until now, I had been satisfied that what we went back and forth with our attorney was complete and satisfactory.
And some of this is verified with Ken in certain bunch of spots, and he isn't even here tonight to declare that's what he did or didn't say or did or didn't do. If you want to build your house, we can approve this tonight. If you want to pick and nitpick and try to alter or rewrite or clarify your version of history versus our version of history, we're going to be at this for meeting after meeting. I don't know what else you want. I mean, right now my feeling is you should go back to David, that David should talk to you, send it back to the board with a draft. The board has a chance to review it. We try this again in 2 weeks.
And Mr. Christian, just to give you a little bit of comfort, it's probably less nefarious than maybe you're thinking. So with the word principal structure, for example, was added.
Yeah.
That's the language straight out of the NOV. So that's part of the reason that we made that change. So look, I think that, so if we had received this, I'm not saying this as an excuse, if we had received this a couple of weeks ago, I probably could have worked between just lawyer to lawyer, and
Yeah.
a lot of this would have been worked out. So we tried to work it out as quickly as
Okay.
possible. But it's not as, I just point that one change out, so it's not as nefarious as maybe you're thinking.
Okay, I understand that, and I don't think it is. It just concerns me, because the thing that's saying, CEO determined not to fine the applicant to change it, CEO determined no fine was required or appropriate, it just worries me. Maybe what we're saying is this is a bridge too far. And I appreciate that you only got this maybe a week ago, so maybe.
We received it yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday,
Yeah.
okay, so, more to the point then, more to the point.
And we got this today.
You perhaps didn't have enough time, and we just got it today, so it may be that we just need a little more time to finish this. I think what Chairman Miller's suggestion was if you two could come to some agreement on addressing his concerns, and he could get back to us,
And
and
Ken,
we would have our conversation as the planning board with our attorney, and if he was satisfied that that didn't substantively alter what we wanted, I certainly would have no problem with it, or would have no problem with the original one tonight. But yeah, that's just my concern.
David raised his hand. He was-
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if it's at all helpful, but there's just a little bit of background here that may be helpful to explain to the board. First of all, just as a matter of basic procedure, although we exchanged a draft and we all commented on it, just as a purely legal matter, that's not a thing. And what happens in this room tonight is the thing. Somebody's going to make a motion to introduce either something orally, you can read it or say it, or you can say, I've got this piece of paper that everybody's got. So we can change it at whatever stage we want, as we did during the weekend as the applicant suggesting. So I've indicated to the applicant that their statement is entire, to the extent that this is not a public hearing, but the applicant is usually allowed to speak. So if they stand up there and say, we've seen the draft, but we want to, we can have this conversation. As to the lateness of it, there's both prudence and the law. The law requires draft resolutions such as this to be published basically at least 24 hours in advance or as soon as you have it. Published meaning up on the web, given to anybody who asked for it and they asked for it. We didn't finish it in terms of our own deliberations until basically yesterday, and it was sent out to them immediately thereafter. So and that's completely compliant with the law. As a practical matter, 24 hours is enough time to turn around comments on a 3-page resolution. Now for this board, obviously, we've only gotten their comments, a couple of hours ago, and so that may not be enough time. I did have some conversations with them, and I did advise them that if you have comments on and what even the attorney recognized was the nuts and bolts, the actual, really, the workhorse of the resolution, which is, resolved, you get your approval, you're approving this, conditions are that if there's a question on those things, if the detail is wrong, or if a condition is too onerous, if we say get us the drawings within 30 days and they need 45 days, they can request that and said, if that's what's going to be coming, because I had not seen it yet, okay, keep it short, simple, and we can get that done. And when we got what we got, I turned around my comments. I actually sent it to them before I sent it to you. I said, this is what I'm going to recommend. You decide whether you want to pull back some of these, because at my count there was 16 comments on the resolves, which, by the way, again, resolves.
Whereas.
I'm sorry. Thank you. The resolves is just the backstory. We're just
The whereas.
the recitals are just the backstory. It's just what happened in the past. We can disagree on the details. It doesn't have that much legal. The legal nuts and bolts of your resolution are the resolves, are the decretal paragraphs. The whereas is, we can disagree or we can write something. It's not that important. And I kind of said, just think about what you want to do in terms of, we're all clear on, as council pointed out, we're all clear on the resolve, we're all clear on what we're doing and what the condition is, and I left it up to them essentially as to what do you want to do here tonight, and basically the response is that they wanted to come and leave it as it was. So to get to the meat of this, we have basically 16 questions about the recitals. Some of them, council's correct, I said, yeah, it's a good correction, we'll just take it. But some of them do involve either A, thinking about the language, because we're to some extent disagreeing over certain grammar and other language issues, which are useful, if that's what you want to do. And some of them do require, frankly, a consultation with the people that know a lot more about, early 20th century things than I know. And I just was in no position whatsoever to get into that. And Ken and I and Darren have had conversations about this, and I said, if we're going to get into those on the recitals, we just need to talk about it, And so we can certainly talk about it now because there's no motion on the floor yet. We can mark it up now. It depends on what the board wants to do. We can go through it, or we can take the time and have these same conversations we had over the last week. And the applicant was aware that there was a risk that if we were going to take the 16 suggestions, that it was going to involve more work. And that's where we left it the last I had communications, and so the matter's before you. And
Because this is sort of rewriting what we had worked on for the past year, that we've settled on, we've come to agreement on, that we're willing to sign this, vote on this resolution and we sign it, and it's done. And now, I want this clarified. I'm not ready to, it says David Miller Chair at the back. I'm not ready to sign this until we get clarifications of the things you didn't like. You need to talk to Ken, questions you have to Ken, and then I need the board to look at it and see if they agree with these words. I don't want to re-argue this argument that's been going on for years, that we had some great meetings the past few weeks. We've agreed on all of this, and we're about to vote and let you build your house tomorrow. And now you're trying to rewrite the whereases to make a point. It doesn't seem to be valid.
It's not to make a point. It's actually, I just want to say this, I understand it looks like a lot of red, or it looks like a lot of comment, and frankly, I'm happy to, as John Clark suggested, the ones that actually had notation from you of discussion or that you would reject, I'm happy to run through those. I think there's only 6 or 7 of those, because frankly, some of those we may decide to strike right now. But for some of these other ones, it's simple clarification of saying, July 6th, we did actually have a meeting with the building inspector.
We're going to call Ken McLaughlin right now and ask him the 2 or 3 questions that David said we should consult with him on.
I would point out to the board that in almost every situation where I said we need to consult with the building inspector, it was the building inspector or Darren who had a great deal of influence and provided a great deal of knowledge, and very helpfully is on the board. So the ownership of the motion is Darren is actually, unless there's something very, very specific with the NOV, Darren, I think, would be a very helpful resource on a lot of this if the board decides to have that discussion now. I mean, there were some technical details that I just didn't know. At one point we talked about taking down the building, and they changed it to like the three sides of the frame, or just things like that. It's not even that technical, it's just the sort of thing that, as a matter of prudence, I did not want to be ruling on that without bouncing it off of people that actually knew what they were talking about.
I appreciate that, David, and I understand that's why we have you. But if I could just make another comment, or just kind of restate what seems to me to be the obvious. If I heard you correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, no one's objecting to the resolved statements. And
Correct.
the resolved statements are the substance that we're all held to.
Correct.
That's right.
If that's the case, and we think that frankly most of the other stuff is just wording, etc., and does not change what's resolved here, I'm suggesting, or maybe David's already suggested it, but I'm suggesting we just move to approve the original one that we all saw and were satisfied with, as long as we confirm that all of the resolves were not changed. Would you be happy with that?
Would you mind if we discussed for a few minutes?
Sure, please
Is
do,
that fine?
please do, please
Yeah.
do.
I want to point out to the board also, the decision as to everything that we do here,
Yeah.
in terms of whether to move forward, and also in particular, whether to change this, that, or the other
Yeah.
thing, it is entirely the board's.
Yeah.
the board is welcome. It's not a public hearing, but obviously the applicant has a strong voice here. We can listen to whatever the applicant says or wants to do and their rationale. Ultimately, the
Right.
decision for every single one of the 16 proposals comes down to the board and what you want. It's your resolution. And in my experience, if you're approving a project, and in particular if there's no dispute over the actual approval, there's very few applicants that will be upset about getting an approval that basically approves what they want, but not every result reflects the characterization that they would have.
Right.
Most applicants are usually okay with that, but ultimately it's the board's vision of what you're approving. It's your approval, it's going to be your motion, your vote, so it's whatever, ultimately at the end, it's what you guys wanted to say,
Right.
having heard from all the voices.
I understand that clarification, and it's what, and you stated it before, and I agree with it, but also, so understanding that the resolves are the operative legal statements that we've already decided we were happy with, and we're eager, well, I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I was hoping we could approve tonight, so as David says, you could just get on with it. Please, take some time, take a few minutes.
Let us talk.
Yeah.
And if you think that,
appreciate it.
if you think that's the operative stuff that you're comfortable with, why don't we move ahead with that?
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr.
let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Give us 2 minutes.
There's no signal on the,
Oh, thank you. How's that?
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
DD, I said, DD, what's DD? Department of Defense, what's David talking about? And he's like, I asked,
Oh.
Justin, I said, what's DD? The
Sometimes
Department
I-
of Defense, you know, what
Sometimes
is that?
late in the afternoon, I
And he said, you
I
were
collapse
punchy at
into,
that point.
I collapse into
Now we know,
abbreviations
so you
and
clarify
acronyms.
DD, I understand.
Yeah, like I said, the basic wording, I could either thumbs up or thumbs down, or it's okay, but when it came to, frames and joists and banging things into corners and stuff like that, it's like, I want the smart people involved in that. I'm just not gonna,
The only, by the way, in the original one that I'm hoping we can
This is
deal
the
with,
second one.
the only thing that's missing is, in the first resolve, it says, as depicted on revised plans dated blank.
yeah, well, we need to fill in the date of the plans, whatever, because that's actually the absolute nuts and bolts of a site plan approval. We're approving this document. Oops. And so and because documents are always, in fact,
Okay.
a good process means that they come in February with a document, then we all discuss it, and then in March they come in with a different one. So ultimately, you're approving the latest stated document. I just didn't know what it was.
And we all got Warren's final plans last week, and we've all looked at them, and that's what we're approving.
So
And
it's
we're
October
happy with
And again,
that.
that's an example where the resolution is not really a final thing until we decide it. And so you can easily just pull out a pen right now.
And sign the plan.
Write it in, and that becomes your resolution with the date in it. I just didn't know what it was. And at the time I was dealing with it, it was better to get it off my desk and get it out to people.
Copies that I
see it.
provided you.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah, the
believe
last copy of it.
it's the January 11, 2023 plan revised October 23, 2023. Revision.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
That's what
we
we're
would
approving,
say.
and we got that. And that looked good, we liked
And
everything on
if
it.
Ryan has that, then we got a complete resolution. I mean, if you don't have to write down the dates, but that's, even though it's a kind of a different type of a detail, that's exactly an example of a resolution that only becomes a real resolution here in this meeting or thereafter when it's finalized. So we can do anything we want tonight, including that.
That puts my mind
What I
at
tried to
ease.
point out to the applicant is that there's a limit to what we can do efficiently in real time.
Because when it's done, Ken or Justin has to look at Warren's plans, walk around and say, yeah, that's here, that's here, that's here, that's here. So it's the plans that mean everything. This resolution is just, I don't know.
Well, sometimes, to be clear, very often there are conditions that actually have to be in words as opposed to being on the plan, like you'll get us a revised thing here, or you'll
Right.
apply to the Department of Health by this time, and you only have 6 months to do it. And in fact, if you look at the draft resolution, we have general conditions at the end, which basically is boilerplates for everything. It's like every you always got to get all your other approvals. You've always got to do this. You always got to show up, you know, or if it's a subdivision, you've got to, you know, file it. You got to record it with the county. Those sorts of things. But special conditions are the ones that the board, when you give site plan approval, like, this is how this project is going to be governed. And in fact, I would suggest that part of the reason why this application may have been more difficult than it was because at the original site plan approval in December, we didn't have anything in writing, we didn't have specific conditions, and the board on some issues might have had different expectations than what the applicant did, particularly when in July and June when things started, when there were problems. And if you have the conditions written down, then we all know what we're governed by. And the lack of that becomes an issue. But that's why resolved, we're going to do this. Also resolved, we're doing that. These are the conditions we're approving this on a particular plan on a particular day with a particular set of conditions. That's nuts and bolts of it. The whereas are just, this is the backstory.
So whereas the sky is blue doesn't have any, you know, effect on the actual resolutions themselves.
It does, other than that, sometimes in law, you can look to the words of the actual thing that's governing you, like a statute or a resolution, but sometimes if it's ambiguous, you go back and look at the story to basically get a better understanding of what it means. In the case of a court looking at, for example, legislation, like a congressional law, they look at what's called the legislative history. So when it was in committee, what were people arguing if there's a word that's ambiguous? That happens all the time. And so this is almost like that. This is our legislative history. If there was an ambiguous word in the resolves, what do we mean by that? What happened? Well, it was before the building inspector at this time, and he said this, and then that, and this thing happened. And that at times that can help you interpret the wording of the resolves. But it's the wording of the resolves that's the actual approval. So people can sometimes, I mean, look, we can discuss the wording of the recitals, but it's really a prudential thing. If you're an applicant that you want to be approved on a particular day, there's just a cost benefit analysis of how deep do you dig on trying to get your version. Well, first of all, you want to dig pretty deep on getting your version of the present, your version of the resolves. But in terms of how much you want to dig on getting your version of the past, the whereases, it's all this is a prudential thing, and that's why I told the applicant.
I can't say any more than that.
16 of them
Came in here tonight at 7:01. I'd asked for recommendation to approve the revised site plan, and they could build their house tomorrow. And I don't know.
If the concern was over the terms of the
But it's not.
the resolve, then that would be a more important thing. Do we want to get it done by a certain date? Is it supposed to be 15 feet high or 20 feet high, or which plan are we dealing with? But it's up to whatever we want to do. I tried to move it forward. We certainly sent it out as soon as we finalized it, and also with the 24 hours in advance. The open meetings law does require the resolutions, if we have it, to get it out there. And they've been asking for it, so.
And the thing I will be asked to sign when this is done is Warren's plans. And that goes, it's not like 6 copies of their plans, it goes to the county, it goes to the applicant, it goes in the file, and then they can start building. You know, so we've all seen that plan. Warren, thanks for getting that out last week, and we all looked at it, and we agreed that everything that we've talked
I
about
also
for months.
let them see how I broke it down. Like I said, send it back to them before I send it to the board. I said, I'm sending this out in half an hour. How many do you want to pull any of these for? So that's right.
There's another applicant when you need him. You can sign your specs right now.
You know, I can go, we can talk about my house if you want. I'm kidding.
Consider it amended.
Is it moving along?
Well, if you're going
You stuck
to
anywhere?
tell us about your trip.
Trip to where? Yeah, the garage is, we're getting there with the garage. It's almost done. Putting in the new septic field today, actually.
Is your plan in your garage to live in there while you work on the house?
Yeah, but don't tell the health department.
No, we gave, on Platt Avenue, they were building a garage with a playroom or a
Thank you,
thing above the
thank you.
garage. And we let them, live there while they finished renovating and then we built it. So we've done that before.
Go ahead.
Do you want me to switch? Mr. Chair, members of the board, give me one more shot. We appreciate that you didn't receive this until a couple hours ago. It's difficult, we get it. There's one change that we have in here that we want to know if you'll consider tonight. It's not in the whereas clauses. We'll take the whereas clauses as they were drafted by Mr. Gordon that you received and you approved heading into this. We have no changes to the resolve. One change on the last page, the identification of the submissions that were made over the last couple of months. All this is, it looks like a lot of red, but all this is was the addition to make sure that everything that was submitted is included here. And we added the dates, right? So this is just to make sure that everything that was submitted is listed here correctly. We note that your attorney said no objection to that one change on that very last page. So that's the one thing we would ask if you'd consider is to make that last change. There was an exhaustive list of materials that were submitted, and we just want to make sure that the applicant and everything the applicant did here is listed there correctly. That's all.
3 dozen, so you want to add the dates of all these submissions?
It was simply what we went through and did was just, we dated them and ordered them just in order of kind of when they were submitted. And then we added in some items that were missing.
Certain submissions were missing.
Through emails, et cetera.
And again, we note that your attorney indicated no objection to that change. So all that is just making sure that the record of what we submitted is complete.
And none of that are things that you haven't seen before. That's all things that were July, August, that's previous things.
If your board will agree to that one change, we're good. Let's get our approval tonight and I'll go home.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Lund, can you repeat that? So on the last page, I got up through 16, zinc standing seam roof, 2830.
Sure.
On your,
2830, that was just, it was a reference photo of a neighboring property
yeah.
of what the zinc roof is going to look like on my house.
Which number was that?
That was, in our edit, it's listed as number 16.
8923 applicants submitted proposed clarifications to NOV.
I'm sorry. It lists your original 16.
My original 16.
Okay, here's.
So it's
here's
number 27 of the edited list.
27. Okay, so here's, let me see if I can make this a little
Photo
bigger.
of the zinc standing seam roof on 2830 Chestnut Street.
And
That was David 17.
And that's actually not one that we added. That's already in but when we did the red line, it popped up as a change because we added the word photo.
These 16 that shows with the cross out, those are the original 16 from the resolution.
Okay.
And the list of 27 is the original 16 plus the additionals.
So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think what I'm looking at now is the original one, where we're saying we're not changing any of the resolves. And in this original one, it goes down, these look familiar to you?
Yeah, these are all still in here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're suggesting adding one line to that?
No, what I'm adding are, there's 17 there. There were, I believe, 9 additional submissions throughout the course of this process that they weren't like plan sets that were submitted. It was things that happened kind of earlier on in the process, from mainly in July and August, that we wanted to include here just because they have been part of the conversations that we have had going through this process.
Okay. I'll pause you there because my concern, and I raised this while you were out debating, was in the first resolved. Now, therefore, be it resolved. And what's blank is, as depicted on revised plans dated blank, which we want to fill in. So, and while you were discussing, I think we were asking ourselves, so what would we put in there? I think, Darren, you stated it would be, which two?
It's the most recent submission, so it's the January 11th, 2023 revised, October 23rd, 2023 is what I believe to be the last thing we got.
Right, that's
from Warren.
the last plans that we got from Warren.
And
We're
that
approving the
incorporated a lot
plans
of
that Warren gave to us, Leslie. That's what, this is incidental to it. We're approving the plans.
Right.
I have to sign the plans, you can build your house, and then Ken and Justin will look at the plans, walk through the house. Is this window here, is this door there? Yes, they followed the plans, and the certificate of occupancy is issued. That's the way it works. So it's the plans more important than this. So, David, do you understand the ordering? Are you comfortable with the reordering of these documents?
Yeah, the order doesn't really matter that much. They felt they need to put it in chronological order. They added, I would just point out, 11 documents because we had, I think, 17, and they've got 28. So quick subtraction tells me we've got 11 extras. This is fine. I mean, this is. I would say, you know.
So
If you look at all the documents, the record is, just so the board is aware, if, God forbid, something happened and there was a challenge to the resolution and we were in court, we would have to produce something called the administrative record. The administrative record is not necessarily based on the list here. This list becomes part of the record because the resolution is part of the record, but the record really consists of everything that Ryan's got in his drawers. And that's the record that the board had before it. So if that ever came about, the full list of the things that the board was considered would be based on what was submitted to us and what Ryan has and what's in our files. And so it's nice to be full and complete, but obviously the levels of completeness can change. We could have said the entire, July 23rd submittal, and that could be one line, or it could be 15 if they submitted 15 different sheets or whatever. So it doesn't matter that much. It's fine. I don't see any reason to. Let's put it this way: very few attorneys or public officials would spend a great deal of time disputing over recharacterizing something like this. You'd want to basically get a list that's accurate and as complete as you can. But like I said, ultimately, at the end of the day, what we've looked at is what we've looked at, regardless of what we've said.
Can I ask a question? I actually like the list very much. It actually speaks to a point.
The revised list, you mean?
The list in general, having the exhibits here, because it speaks to a point that came up at, I think it was the last meeting, and that is there have been a number of submittals along the way. So to me, it gives me comfort to be able to refer back and say, yes, we saw that cut sheet of L zinc, and that is what we based our approval on, knowing that you were going to do a zinc roof on this house. The only and also goes one step further, it's what created A17, because if you remember, I asked for some of those things to be brought into the plan set, because the amount of submittals got to be pretty hefty, so tracking down which was the most recent version.
That's part of why I
things.
wanted to expand on this.
Right, so I think I like that a lot. Again, David could speak to it a lot better than I could, but the only procedural question I had is, many of these things aren't actually dated on the document themselves. So this is a David Gordon question. So if there was a sheet of photos submitted and there's no heading on it or there's no date on that document, I don't know that I could point to it in a lineup and be like, oh yeah, that was the one that was submitted. Certainly I have my own records.
These
but
dates are from the email submissions to Village. So
okay,
this
so we
is,
found the email, we
yes,
could
so
see the attached document.
all of these dates are dates that you could verify on your end through
Okay.
email.
That's what I was struggling with, because
Yeah.
I couldn't pull the L zinc cut sheet you submitted
Yep.
2 years from now, because it might have been changed on the website, and if
Yep.
I didn't have it, I couldn't say, this is exactly what they submitted back then.
Or in a previous century, we would have answered the question of the date because it was Ryan was that
Somebody
stamp.
stamped it in, yeah.
So, Mr. David, and everything that you said, everything that your council said, I'm in total agreement with. The purpose of this is just to make sure that there's a nice, complete, comprehensive list, so that if we ever need to refer back to it, we're all on the same page as to what was submitted, when it was submitted, and what was reviewed. So, what I would ask that your board do tonight is approve your version that you received this morning without any of our other changes, with the caveat of the addition of this change to the list of documents.
So David, I could make a motion.
Jeff has- Before you go on, just to make sure I've got this correctly, the blank we're going to fill in would be dated blank, would be January, resolved dated January 11th, 2023, revised October which?
23rd,
Was that
Oh,
October
23rd.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
23rd of 2023.
Yes.
That's actually much more important than.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed.
All right.
Because that's the actual plan, that
Yes.
if the building
Yes.
inspector was concerned about something that was a little bit off, that's what he's gonna look at.
All
It's
right.
gonna be way more important than.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Chair, so you can go on ahead, or I'll make
I
a
could make
motion.
a motion to approve the modified resolution for the amended site plan for 810 Chestnut Street.
That's right. And just to be clear, it would be the draft that's before you with the sole exception of using their list of identified documents rather than the previous list. Their list would be 28 documents long as has been before the board electronically as opposed to the previous 17. I would suggest that be part of the motion and then I think we'll just basically
So-
set it up.
I'd like to add one other thing to the
Go ahead.
motion. Go ahead, Jeff.
Go ahead.
Could we just put a clause in there that in the event that there's a conflict between items submitted on this list and the plan that's dated October 23rd, 2023, this would trump
Plan.
it? And the
That's
reason
the
I'm going
precedent.
there is because you clarified some details in the last meeting that you corrected in this set of plans, so these would be more accurate.
Darren, you don't actually need that.
Okay.
Because,
Yeah.
because the,
The dated plan set is.
Is the master
the
document.
resolved clause, which is the beating heart of the resolution, that's what we're doing. The resolve clause says in plain English, we're approving plans dated a certain date.
Got it.
The list of documents at the end is almost an administrative detail. In fact, there's not even much language around it, just, these are the documents that we looked at.
Okay.
It's really a help for somebody compiling that record and otherwise, clarifying things. But if it says resolved, we're approving the amended site plan dated January 11th as revised, October 23rd and on file, that's your approval.
Great.
Nothing else, everything else is,
And that's
anything
the
else you
plan.
disagree, if anything else, if we made a mistake, which actually sometimes happens, and something happens to disagree with it, the starting point is what does the language say that we approved? In black and white, it says we're approving plans dated October 23rd, and nothing, I wouldn't touch that unless there's a reason to.
Agreed.
Clear and helpful.
So, would someone like to put that together and make the resolution here with all of everybody's
So-
comments?
You already have a motion,
Right.
Chair.
So, but David, are you saying then that,
I was suggesting the motion today, I didn't actually make it.
My suggestion would be a motion,
are you suggesting we don't need to add these other 11 docs that were listed for reference?
we don't, the applicant has requested for us to do it as a matter of completeness. There's no objection to it, it improves the document, but
Fine.
it doesn't mess up the fundamental
Fine.
approval.
Fine.
It improves the references, it improves the completeness. If,
Okay.
like I said, God forbid we were ever sued, it would improve the ability to create the record, it's right there, as opposed to having to go through Ryan's files, but it does not change the approval. If we change the language in the conditions, that's something we want to think about, or the resolve, but this is fine.
Okay, so then I would suggest, if you will, to add to Chairman Miller's recommendation that we have a motion to approve the resolution subject to updating the clause in the first resolve statement to be as depicted on revised plans dated January 11th, 2023, revised October 23rd, 2023, and for reference purposes to include the 11 additional documents requested by the applicant.
And
So
the
Jeff, are you making that motion?
I'm making that motion.
Okay.
Okay, good.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Go build your house.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you, David, for all your hard work.
Ken's gonna get some recommendation.
And so we don't have any other agenda items. Our next meeting, we're still working on minutes. We should be able to approve the minutes at the next meeting. To get comments out, so we can have corrected stuff and get them posted. And we'll be meeting again in 2 weeks. and business is quite slow. John just commented that business is very slow down in Beacon too.
Did we need to discuss the holiday schedule that we started to talk about last week, and we waited until John was here to talk about it?
Yeah, well,
That can wait until till the first meeting in December, because we have agenda items for the 21st. I guess the only thing we could discuss is everybody gonna be here on the 21st? Will we have a quorum?
it's 2 days before Thanksgiving. Was that okay with everybody? Are we going to have turkey elsewhere?
I'm here.
I'm here.
I'm good.
Okay, so we'll meet on the 19th, then we'll discuss what we do in December. We can meet, and then the next meeting is far away from Christmas. It's like 4 days before Christmas. That seems okay. The only other question is January 2nd.
Yes.
It falls, January 1st is a Monday, and we would be January 2nd, which some people might get as a holiday. Some people might not be around. If we have critical items, we can talk about that at the next meeting or December meeting, if that January 2nd. Ryan said Village Hall is going to be open, but a lot of businesses may be closed, and I don't want to, people could be out of town because it's right after the holiday.
Also, people would have to get their documents to you the week between Christmas and New Year's.
Right, so maybe
The
January
board,
2nd.
just for food for thought, turkey for thought, the board has in the past canceled that meeting when it's so close to New Year's.
Yeah.
And you've
So
only met once.
Christmas is very
in
far away,
in
4 days,
January.
but New Year's it's the next day, and so I would, we have to push it. We can talk about that next week or next month. We'll see how business is. Anybody have anything else to say? Okay, do a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Jeff?
David second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.